extraordinary conversation. This will be the second installment of the McCain Institute's Leadership in Action series, and our two participants in this discussion will be joining us shortly. So let me just briefly tell you a little bit about who they are. One you already know well. It's hard to imagine a better fit for a leadership in action conversation than Cindy McCain. She is a force of nature, businesswoman as she arrives, philanthropist, humanitarian, visionary activist, wife of United States Senator John McCain. She's also a tireless champion in the fight against human trafficking and modern slavery. As Ambassador Volker mentioned this morning, she chairs the McCain Institute's Human Trafficking Advisory Council and is co-chair of the Arizona Governor's Council on Human Trafficking. Joining Mrs. McCain for today's conversation is Emanuel Medeiros, the CEO of the International Center for Sport Security, a globally respected leader in sport safety, security, and integrity. Mr. Medeiros is the former CEO of the European Professional Football Leagues and one of the founding fathers of the Pan-European Association that represents the 30 leagues and almost 1,000 clubs across Europe. He is a former FIFA committee member on club football, part of the EU expert group on good governance in sport, and Portugal's ambassador for sports ethics. So let me introduce and welcome our two participants in today's Leadership in Action series, Cindy McCain and Emanuel Medeiros.
Thank you.
I'm supposed to get the cords out of the way, so that's what I'm doing. Welcome, and thank you very much for being a part of this. Can you all hear? No. Okay, who's the mic guy? Mr. Mike. Here you are. Thank you for being here, and please continue to eat. But I sincerely appreciate you on behalf of all of the people that worked so hard to put this together, but most specifically on behalf of the victims that you're here and involved in this issue and involved in what I believe is not only epidemic proportions, but something that I really think we can fix if we work together. I really believe this now. I've been accused of living in Disneyland on occasion, but I really believe this. And I am so happy to have Emanuel here today. Emanuel's a very good friend of mine, among other things, but most of all, his activism on working on really tough issues as it applies to sports, which is a whole other arm of this scourge that we know. He has driven an initiative and driven people in Europe particularly, but in South America as well, Africa, to not only take a look at this issue, but now is time for action, which is why I get along with him so well. So welcome, Emanuel.
Thank you, Cindy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Please, what I'd like to know first is how and why? Why did you get into this? What makes you tick?
How could I not be? How could I not be? How could any one of us turn a blind eye to what's happening? This is our time. This is our shift. Things are happening with monumental proportions, widespread impact, touching lives of people, hurting values that we hold dear for our civilization, values like respect for human rights, respect for human dignity. How can we not act? How can we not be the agents of change we want to see in the world? And it is precisely for that I could not stand still, despite my family being awaiting for me for a break after years and years of traveling. So Cindy, thank you very much. Thank you very much for organizing this. You and your team have done a magnificent job. And I am absolutely overwhelmed. I'm impressed. I'm all fired up. Witnessing what I've witnessed here this morning, such a strong leadership, such a strong call for action, which demonstrates that we are not alone, and more think like us and are ready to roll up the sleeves and do what it takes, do what's right. And that is a privilege, that is an honor to be here. And thanks for your leadership.
Thank you. When you initially asked me to join your initiative and join your quest on this, I thought to myself, okay, sports, all right. I've had my dealings with the NFL here and a few others that were not happy endings. So I was all about diving into sports and doing this. How big is this problem in sports? Not just trafficking, but all the other criminal elements that are part of this.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we are dealing with the ugly side of the beautiful game. Mm-hmm. And I would very much prefer to speak about the great Super Bowl that you have all seen yesterday, and particularly because the Patriots won. And I'm sorry if I'm upsetting someone in this room. But it's one of the tragedies that, on one hand, we have one of the most appealing, popular activities in the world, something that touches our lives, that commands our dreams, that fuels our enthusiasm, being part of our DNA and our culture and our collective identity, generating billions and billions, and being a catalyst of social and economic development. And on the other hand, we have the dark side. Now, this dark side is not created by sport itself. It's created by society, and the problems that confront sport are deep-rooted, widespread social problems. The trafficking and smuggling of children and young people in and through sport is one of these flagellums. And it is global, it is big, it is organized. That is why the solution must be global, must be comprehensive, and must be holistic. The problem, the frustration that I face constantly is to make governments understand that they do have responsibility in this field, undeclinable responsibilities, is to make them understand that sport is not some form of marginal activity or exists outside of our legal system. And the problems are not minor, they are big. They affect all sports, they affect all countries, including the United States. And for those who think that I am inventing things, I suggest you speak with the Homeland Security Department, who has a year ago discovered 30 children in a gymnasium with hopes to be playing basketball collegiate sports, but were living sleeping in the floor in the gymnasium in subhuman conditions. It affects several sports, being soccer the most predominant, the most visible one. Some people say we don't have statistics. Some governments say we don't have exact figures, so we cannot measure the scale and the magnitude of the problem. I say this cannot be the attitude, because according to reports that we already have, 20,000 boys and girls smuggled and trafficked from Africa were estimated to be abandoned in the streets of Europe in 2010. We have heard allegations that 1,500 young boys and girls were smuggled and trafficked from Africa into Europe every year. We have seen also how this is not just a criminal activity. It's a criminal activity that is fueling other criminal activities. For example, in Ivory Coast, 2 years ago, our reports told us that the dark side of economy was being shifted from smuggling of timber and diamonds into the establishment of illegal soccer academies.
Can you explain that? What happens when a soccer academy starts, and just what the process is in terms of trafficking?
Well, normally the modus operandi, the pattern is fake agents, fake scouts approaching slum mothers and slum fathers, promising wonderful careers in the biggest, most famous clubs around the world. In England, in Spain, in Portugal, in Russia, we have seen episodes of children and families who had to sell even their own dignity to gather the money to pay to that unscrupulous guy who had promised he would put his son in one of the top youth academies abroad, using fake papers, fake signatures, with logos of these big teams. And when the kids arrive at the airport, they have no one awaiting for them. They don't speak the language. They are completely vulnerable, and they don't have money to go back. We have also seen how clubs working in a very standardized fashion get these players smuggled into their own countries. They retain the passports. So these people have nowhere to go. If they have talent to kick the ball, they may have some shot. But this is 1 in a million. The majority of them, they are left at their own mercy. They end up in the streets. And sometimes the despair is so big that if they can afford that bullet, they will use it as they have done in the past. So I'm not here to spoil your appetite, but I'm here to wake up conscience in case we have in this room, which I hope we don't, any person still not sensitive to these issues. I understand that sport is something new for many of you, but sport is not immune. And if we allow this perception of immunity, if we allow this perception that sport is something apart, untouched by organized crime, then we are making them a favor. We are making sport vulnerable. Prevention implies awareness and implies recognizing that the problem exists. I could also say that it's going to be tough to change mentalities in this country about sport. We have seen some reactions regarding concussion. You know, it's now a reality, nobody denies. But what about back then? So this will require the collective engagement and the collective action of all of you, because trafficking and smuggling in sport is not different from trafficking and smuggling for sex abuse or work slavery. It is not, unfortunately.
And many of these kids that are incorporated in these, quote, sports teams or these syndicates around there do wind up in sex slavery or in labor trafficking, because that is the sham that these guys find these kids on. Am I correct? Mm-hmm. And then that's not what they're going for. They're indeed labor trafficked and sex trafficked, as we all know happens here in the United States and around the world. Can you tell me, let's talk about SIGA for a minute, which is what I'm involved in, the Sports Integrity Global Alliance. And talk to me about how and why you put that together and what your goal is for it on this issue and others too.
Well, SIGA is
amazing. SIGA is amazing. Let's just put it that way.
I'm speechless, which does not happen often, I must say. But SIGA is, I think, our last chance to bring about long-lasting positive change. It is rooted in the belief that the problems are what they are: complex, sophisticated, global, and often involving criminal organizations. So the solutions has to be holistic, it has to be comprehensive, and needs to bring into the solution all those who have the power and the responsibility and the means to not just fix old structures, but to create a new mentality, new structures, where integrity and transparency and accountability and good governance are the #1 priorities. So that is why we try to mobilize governments, international organizations, sport, and sport is, of course, at the forefront, must be, but also global business and civil society. And here, allow me, Cindy, to pay tribute to the effort, the vision, the commitment that you personally and the McCain Institute have given. You have definitely made an incredible effort to give a global footprint to this effort. And that is not only remarkable, it is highly appreciated.
Thank you. You're very kind. Thank you. Thank you. What I found was so interesting in SIGA was your ability to convene the people from all walks of this problem and other problems as well. And now the excitement that's building, not just in Europe, but South America and Africa as well, on this issue, and the importance to be part of the solution, which is what, and action, which is, he preaches action at every meeting we go to, of which I just love, because that's what we're all about too. So I want to commend you for what you do for SIGA, because it would be, the easy way out, as you said, would be you'd be able to go with your family and go and go play. This is a very complex issue, and I want to thank you for what you are doing worldwide, because indeed it is important. It really is. Can we talk a little bit about how we as an institute and as a group of very active people in this room, how we can be helpful on, particularly sport though, and on this issue? Because we're activists. This is a room full of activists. What can we do?
Well, I think you can do a lot, and from what I judge here, you can really be not just the eye-opener, but the game changer. You have the power to convene, you have the power to drive change, you have the power to galvanize support from all these great institutions that are here on the table, all these leaders, all these champions for what is right. And with your own experience and expertise and connections, we can truly create what is needed. Two things: global leadership and the united front committed to action. Action speaks louder than words, and this is something that we have in common, as you know. So, and this is the moment to do what's right. We have also tried to place things where they stand. We have said about human trafficking, we have seen how it was converted into a business, and more than a business, a criminal activity. But in reality, what this is about, and I will quote one of the greatest men of this nation, who had an inspiring visionary speech here on June 11th, 1963, by the name of John F. Kennedy, who said, "We are confronted primarily with a moral issue. It is as ancient as the scriptures and as clear as the American Constitution." So I say to you, if this was valid to pave the way towards a world free of discrimination and racism, it must be valid also to help us tackling the problems that we are confronted in sport. Because sport cannot stay in the darkness. We need to shine a light about these problems, because to acknowledge that they exist is the first step towards credibility and solution-oriented action. And on this note, you know, again, I am really overwhelmed by the messages that were conveyed here. And I would like to emphasize and second the call for action that I heard from Chandra. I was impressed. My fever became like my skin became like a chicken skin, because I could listen to myself in those words. She said, "Nobody empowered me. I empowered myself." She also added, "Everybody's fighting for funding. Everybody's fighting for social media. No. Please forget your egos. Let's work together." This is absolutely right. Right on the target. This is what we have to do. No one is exempted. Responsibility lies with each and one of you and each and one of us. And Cindy, you are a person with vision, strong leadership, strong commitment. Help us to get to where we need to go.
Thank you. Thank you. You can see why I like him so much, and you can see why I get along with Emanuel very well. My husband said to me, so take this for what it is, okay? My husband meant, he was trying to be very kind when he described me this way, and I took it that way. He said, "I'm like the chihuahua in the room that keeps biting your ankles till you finally do something to get rid of me." And I'll wear that. I like that, actually. You know, some of the challenges that we faced here in the United States and, of course, around the world is the fight, or the lack of the fight, and the lack of understanding. What specifically do you see in terms of SIGA and, of course, the Global Alliance in general? How do you see training, awareness, you know, those issues we're now getting into the weeds and the necessities that we need?
That's a very pertinent question, and I would like to...
And can we involve players?
Yes, of course. We should, we must. But let me tell you a little bit about how I see the United States. I see the United States not just as a big, efficient law enforcement machine. We have seen that in the FIFA case, and we need to thank law enforcement for have done what they have done, because they have turned a new light into this problem. and expose how deep it was and ramificated, and that is fundamental. Something that the European law enforcement and the European authorities have not done for whatever reason. And I think this is a reason for embarrassment on their side. The second thing I would like to say is this. Many of the problems that we have discussed here, and others related to financial transactions, related to opaque ownership structures, related to money laundering, doping, and other problems, they could be easily tackled if the United States authorities would have a straightforward, proactive stance. Most of these activities occur within the US financial system and use US financial currency. When we suffer in Europe, including my country, with foreign investment, whose origin, whose motivation, we don't know. We don't even know the color of the money, but the money is offered cash in some cases. It could be solved with the leadership, with appropriate regulatory structures and effective oversight. And for that, I think the United States can play a leading position, and we will not spare any effort until we see the US committed. They're doing a great job, that's absolutely true, but I think a lot still remains to be done. So, part of the solution is to involve all the key stakeholders. We need to have the clubs, we need to have the leagues, we need to have the players, and we need to have champions and advocates in each and one of us. The leagues are truly the owners of the game? Question mark. No. They are, first and foremost, the custodians of the game's values, be they in the United States, in Mexico, in Colombia, where we just came from, to address these problems with Interpol, with the National Colombian Police, and a wide range of sporting stakeholders. But the leagues and the clubs and the federations, they are the custodians of the games. They don't own it. We collectively own sport, because without us, sport will not exist. It's a privilege? No, it's a responsibility, and should drive us for action. So I would like to continue, and as part of our cooperation agreement, is to develop a very action-orientated plan so that we can address, with positive tone, with a constructive spirit, with an action-oriented message and solutions, what needs to be done. It is very important that everyone understands this. We are not here to machine gun. We are not here just to focus and dig the problems. No, we are here to work on solutions. We are here to work on solutions. And this is what led us to develop, with a number of other partners, two interlinked approaches, two interlinked work streams. One is aimed to develop a set of guiding principles, best practice, covering recruitment, training, education, and protection of young athletes. Very important. Again, these are not grandiloquent proclamations. These are not the fundamental Bill of Rights and the Magna Charta. These are very orientated toolkits, first steps for action. The second is truly to build bridges, to bring people together, mobilize organizations. And we have done this via bilateral cooperation agreements, such as the one that we will sign later today, and we are very proud about that, but also with the UNESCO, with the United Nations Organizations Against Drugs and Crime, with OECD, and I know that David Luna from State Department was supposed to be here, but I want him to know that I value his leadership and his role and his commitment in this field. And if he's not here, please convey him the message, because that's absolutely fair. We are also spurring partnerships involving governments, immigration authorities, and the sports movement. We are bridging Brazil, Latin America, with Cape Verde, Africa, and Portugal in Europe, as we understand this to be a very dynamic triangle where smuggling and trafficking occurs. And of course, with the support of the Organization of Ibero-American States and the progress that we are making in the United States, we help also to contribute to mitigate or even eradicate some of the incidents that we see from south to north.
As part of what just came to my mind just now was the involvement of FIFA. And is that part of this? Has FIFA hindered things before? I know we all watched the World Cup in Brazil most recently, and from what I was told from folks on the ground is that human trafficking was basically an afterthought. So I mean, how do you, and I'm not blaming FIFA necessarily for all of that, but I know that it starts at the top.
Well, I can tell you that FIFA is aware that FIFA has taken...
Thanks to you.
I think, you know, the problems are so wide and so visible they can no longer be ignored.
Yeah.
And I must acknowledge that FIFA gave positive steps. They have enhanced the regulation. They created a special committee that oversees all the transfers of minors. But we also know, I'm a lawyer, as many of you probably are, the devil is in the detail, and circumventing these laws and regulations is not rocket science, unfortunately. But I want to come back to something that Ashton said in his video. This is not a cool topic. This is not a popular topic. Try to raise these issues with the clubs. They will slaughter you because they have to protect their brand, their reputation, their image, and their income sources. So it is very sensitive. But it's important then to understand that if we really want to have a sport clean, a sport where the youngsters can enjoy a safe and sound environment, if we want human dignity to be valid not just in paper but in our lives and how we practice this, then there is still a lot to be done.
There is indeed. I'd like to open it to questions. Would you be willing to take questions?
Absolutely.
From anyone
With pleasure.
in the yes, sir. Have we got microphones roaming around? Okay. Here she comes.
Thank you, Mrs. McCain, Mr. Medeiros. I'd like to actually go back to the FIFA question. There's well-documented forced labor and labor abuse in Qatar that's associated with the World Cup. The complicity of the Qatari government in this is no secret. This is all well documented. ICSS, if I understand correctly, is headquartered in Qatar. I find this really abhorrent and frankly worthy of the condemnation of the entire trafficking community that this is persisting. We have a program in Nepal, in India, and the trafficking of forced labor from South Asia into Qatar to build the World Cup stadiums is well documented. So I'd like to know specifically what is being done and why our community should not revile what is happening in Qatar and with the World Cup, and do everything we can to oppose that the World Cup proceed without sanction in Qatar.
Thank you very much. That is a very pertinent, very important question. I think no one will defend any breach of human rights, be it in Qatar or UAE or Brazil or South Africa or any other country that has ever hosted a major sport event. I think the problems that exist in Qatar are known. The efforts also that have been done by the lawmakers in the country are known. I think they should be faster. All cultural shifts don't happen overnight, but we cannot accept any situation where human dignity is not respected. It's not just about sport, it's about building a new world, a new city. But being sports a part of that reality, obviously it has great impact. We take this matter very seriously, and we have even in the SIGA Universal Standards on Good Governance included a standard where respect for human rights is at the forefront. And we will develop also an independent assessment and rating system. So it's not just self-assessment, it's independent assessment. We will continue to raise our voice high also, condemning abuses. And abuses occur not just in underdeveloped countries or when major sports events are organized. We have also witnessed a major discussion in Brazil regarding sex trafficking and exploitation. We have joined forces with UNICEF and put in place a number of tools, including a special app to provide alerts in cases anyone spotted abusive situations. It turned out to be a precious ally for law enforcement and to protect women and youth in the country. We will continue to do what we have and what we can within our power, making no compromise. You said that ICSS was based in Qatar. It was originally funded there. And we even received funding from Qatar. But we received funding with no strings attached. And we are open to receive funding, as many of you, as long as there are no strings attached. If we have one government or one private institution or public institution who wishes to invest in the governance and integrity of sport, we will gladly take it, because this is needed. But we will never compromise our independence and our neutrality. And this is also respected by the government of Qatar and other donors that work with us, such as the European Union. In my own country, I have seen cases of workers that went to Scandinavia and were found living in dumpsters. That is a very developed, culturally evolved country. But they also had human rights issues. I also know that there are cases in Belgium, in the new hospital they are building in Liège, of labor slavery. So these are not problems that can be contained and labeled as pertaining to one specific country. Unfortunately, we are dealing with a widespread reality, and words are simply not enough. But with commitment, with persistence, we hope that progress can be made step by step.
May I also say that I would, an action item, would you like to lead the charge in getting all of us together to sign? Would you like to lead the charge in collaborating with all of us to put this together? I would be very happy. Good, you're on. All right, I'll help. Anyone else? Questions? I'm missing something? Well, let me ask you this, since we don't have a question right now. Tell me about specifically what the thought was when you included elements like human trafficking, like gambling, like betting. These are all, I know, very intertwined, but tell me, what I want to know is when all of you were sitting around planning this whole thing, why, just how this came, I mean, not how it came about, I'm not explaining myself very well, but specifically why human trafficking came to mind for you. Because most people, most of the time, we're an afterthought.
I think it's the way I am. I cannot stand still.
Yeah.
I cannot stand still, and the same sentiment is shared by my colleagues. And that is why ICSS is a great organization, because it provides you with a platform where you can truly try to make a difference. Humble, small, short, but yet moving forward. Nobody tells me what to do, what to say, but we are all on this together. We all believe that, you know, the times of turning a blind eye are over. Yeah. We believe that sound bites are not an option. Denial is not an option. Who empowered us? No one. Again, we empowered ourselves. And fortunately, we are not alone. I spent half of my professional life in professional sport, in leading positions at club, league, and international organizations. And when I decided to resign, after 9 years leading the European leagues, I left with an immense feeling of mission accomplished. And I wanted truly to, you know, go to the beach, have some grilled fish, some nice white wine.
I'm with you.
These are all wonderful things that Portugal has to offer. In case you don't know, come and visit us. But there was a bitter sentiment. I knew that there was something and so much that I tried to push forward, and I couldn't. I couldn't. I fought against the establishment. I fought against the status quo with a price, as everything in life. So when Mohammed Anzab challenged me to join him at ICSS and spoke to me with the passion and with the excitement, like we can make a new world, you know, full of idealisms, which at my age, 47, could be considered to be naive. I could not resist. And it was his passion that fueled mine, and that is why I'm here. I have a small but dedicated team of professionals, very, very talented, very, very committed. Katie Simmons is Director of Good Governance and Financial Integrity, but we have others. And human trafficking and exploitation and abuse of children could not be in the dark. So we try to also shine a light about that, but more than naming and shaming, we want to name and fame. We want to have positive, successful examples that can fuel, that can spark, that can motivate others to do the same. And as you have seen with SIGA, our partners, the movement is growing, the momentum is growing, and of course it is fantastic to have you on board.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, on that note, you have something that you would like us to do right here?
I would like to formalize the positive and excellent spirit of cooperation which we have developed since the first time we spoke, the identities of views, the shared concerns, the common priorities, and that relentless committed for action. Not waiting for governments, not waiting for public authorities, not waiting for anyone, but just doing what is right because the time is right to do it.
Great.
And I think
Is it up there? All right. Will you join me at the podium?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
You have the pen, right?
I do have.
This is something that, of course, this is coming from Emanuel, but this is something that the McCain Institute feels very clear about. Not only just a memorandum of understanding, but a memorandum in belief that we stand for the same ideals and we want the same safety and integrity and dignity for children around the world, which is what this is about. So I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this and us the opportunity to fight the good fight together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm going to break your good pen. I'm sorry. Don't never give me anything good. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you. Wonderful.